Back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about vocabulary-focused computer science curriculum. We're going to focus on the value of using vocabulary as a central part of teaching computer science at the elementary level. So we're going to talk about key strategies and sequences to help you teach computer science more effectively to elementary students using vocabulary. I'm going to help you identify some key terms and concepts which aligns with K-5 grade levels. Let's get started. Let's talk a little bit about the value of computer science as a subject area for elementary students and how the power of vocabulary is essential to helping them understand central concepts. We're going to go over some of the key terms and how they can connect to activities in your classroom, how you can better integrate vocabulary as a central part of your curriculum development for elementary students. Some of the key curriculum development models you should consider with computer science at the elementary level is definitely project-based learning. Project-based learning is going to allow you to develop rich, robust, long-term projects with students, integrating vocabulary as a part of the process all the way. You're also going to want to align any sort of digital resource, such as robotics, or a hands-on robotics platform, or a digital resource which allows students to explore coding. As we dive into the vocabulary, you're going to find that the performance tasks that you ask students to do in the classroom can be tied to very specific vocabulary. Also very specific depths of learning with each activity, and also as students explore different levels of learning. Throughout this video, as I explore the different grade levels, I will put key terms on the bottom of the screen, some of the central components which is important when thinking about utilizing vocabulary for computer science teaching at the K-5 level. Be sure to balance the use of standards. The words that you use come from a balanced place of digital literacy, computer science, robotics, cybersecurity, and also hardware and software knowledge. A tiered model while you utilize vocabulary is also incredibly important. The bottom tier, the foundational base of terms. These are the introductory terms that you're going to introduce to students at the early levels of kindergarten and grade 1. As students progress with their knowledge, the vocabulary chosen should tie more closely with students' application of skills in the classroom. At the top of this is the utilization of that base vocabulary to be able to support students with expanding their use of their knowledge and also applying it in new ways. And also understanding how their new vocabulary knowledge can help them understand real-world concepts. If you're developing computer science curriculum for elementary students, also consider the number of words at grade level. Choose a number of words that tie closely with the activities and sequence of teaching and learning that you are using. Too many words can be overwhelming. Too few could lack the content. Be sure that you have a nice sweet spot where these words not only hit your activities and projects in terms of student learning, but they also tap into the students' understanding of how they can expand upon that knowledge. Another strategy I want you to consider is repetition of these words to support depths of learning. Words can be repeated throughout grade levels, but be sure as you repeat words at different grade levels that you are also asking students to have a better depth of knowledge with the utilization of that word in the context. Vocabulary also should be in the context of any application of their knowledge. If a student is performing a task that shows their learning, be sure that vocabulary is closely aligned with that task. Also think about scenarios that you create for students. Within these scenarios and scenario-based learning, students can apply vocabulary and apply vocabulary within the context of their answers or how you want them to respond to have effective answers within context questions. The furthest end of this is application knowledge. Application knowledge is when a student understands the vocabulary and understands how to apply it at a deeper level. This video focuses on the tiered vocabulary that can help support students at each grade level, K through 5, and also the activities which can help support student learning. Be sure to check out the other 2 videos on my channel aligned with the K2 focus on computer science vocabulary and also activities which will support the vocabulary. Also the grades 3 through 5 elementary computer science video, which also will focus on vocabulary and activities to support the vocabulary. This video is going to provide you with some vocabulary, but those other videos are going to take a deeper look at the activities and sequences of instruction, which are going to provide you additional value. Grades K and 1, an introduction to computers and basic robotics. In grades K and 1, students start to explore the basics of computer parts, how they input and create outputs on a computer, and also begin exploring robotics. They also should begin understanding the basics of a computer program through hands-on activities with robotics. With robots such as B-bots, students will learn fundamental vocabulary. The curriculum also introduces topics like online safety, helping young students learn how to be safe online. They should learn the value of their personal information and how to not share it on the internet, and learn how to identify safe and unsafe actions within the internet, utilizing engaging questions like, can a robot think on its own? And also, what should you do if something online makes you uncomfortable? Students should be encouraged to think critically about technology and its use. Practical application of this knowledge will come through activities. Practical application of this knowledge will come through activities with robots such as B-bots, which will encourage students to better understand the concepts of tracking and sequencing. This foundational stage sets the stage for building a strong understanding of computers, programming, and digital citizenship. Grade 2, Basic Programming and Robotics Concepts. In Grade 2, students delve deeper into programming and additional robotics concepts. During this year, they will develop a deeper understanding of their fundamental knowledge of programming with the understanding of commands and functions. Students are introduced to the concept of an algorithm and debugging programs, and learning how to fix and troubleshoot programs. A significant addition in the area of robotics is the learning about sensors and how sensors interact with the world around them. The curriculum helps students identify sites like code.org to help further their understanding and learn about the dangers and concerns around cyberbullying. Students are also learning about personally identifiable information, PII, and what information is good and not so good to share on the internet. Students should also be working on understanding the value of a complex password. Students can also be introduced to the ideas of how to identify malware or computer viruses. This will help them foster a better sense of digital security. Through the use of programs such as Scratch Junior, students will learn about the value of sequencing, order, looping, and block-based programming. Concepts like hacking will be introduced to broaden their sense of improving their digital security. Grade 3 is all about exploring the digital world and intermediate robotics. Students focus on intermediate robotic skills and responsible digital engagement. Students are going to know a lot about different robot types designed for elementary age groups, such as B-bots, Ozobots, and Spiro, and understanding their unique applications and features. A focus is placed on troubleshooting and debugging programming sequences, both in robotics and in programming. During that year, you can have thought-provoking activities exploring the value of digital work and its originality, learning how to avoid plagiarism, effectively learning how to put notes into their own words. They're going to expand upon their programming knowledge with the understanding of loops and making programs more efficient. They're going to deepen their knowledge of block-based programming and its role in creating digital products. They're going to have engaging scenarios with digital literacy and a better understanding of digital citizenship through these scenarios, like responding to online message requests. This will help foster a sense of responsibility and safety while being online. Discussion can center around the value of a positive digital footprint and ways to maintain a positive online presence. They're going to investigate more internet safety, also understand the risks involved with clicking links they don't know. It's critical to foster a sense of critical thinking about the appropriateness of sharing information online. The question around how humans utilize robotics is an important question to be addressed at this grade level, and encouraging students to understand the differences in how different robotics are programmed. Grade 4. Advanced Programming in Robotics Design. Grade 4 is a great grade to enhance students' knowledge related to programming and robotics design and taking it to a deeper level. It's important to foster a deeper comprehension of terms like algorithms, programming, and the responsible use of digital tools. Students should be encouraged to understand that algorithms can be a series of steps to solve problems or complete tasks, and to continue to encourage them to practice debugging, emphasizing the importance with correcting problems and errors within code, learning about how loops can make programs more efficient, to emphasize a focus on how the block-based programming software can improve their understanding of programming sequences. Also, the ability of understanding the significance of original work and identifying plagiarism. It's also a great grade level to continue with the concept of the digital footprint and monitoring their online presence, and also understanding the lasting impact of actions they take online. They should also investigate password strategies to help keep them safe on a variety of websites. Additionally, utilizing tools from Google, such as Google Sheets, to help them learn how to track data and have better understanding of how data that's tracked can help make decisions. Grade 5, mastering digital skills and advanced robotics. Students in grade 5 are an amazing place where they can begin to learn more about advanced programming skills, advanced robotics concepts, and begin to use additional digital tools to help enhance their understanding of data concepts. This curriculum helps strongly to support the understanding of digital literacy and the use of digital tools, and the importance of enhancing students' understanding of advanced robotics. They will deepen their knowledge around algorithms, as seeing it as a set of steps to help a computer solve problems. Continue to enhance their understanding of making code more efficient with loops. Utilize Google Sheets to collect, track, analyze data, and how to graph, sort, and average. Students can explore creating subroutines in Scratch Junior to write more complicated programs. Emphasize their ability to avoid plagiarism by citing research work appropriately. Learning how to paraphrase and summarize. Discussions and scenarios can center around identifying cyberbullying, its impact, and how to responsibly deal with it. To support collaboration with digital tools like Google for education, learning better how to collaborate, work online, and share projects with others. So let's review this fantastic sequence. First, in grades K through 1, there's the introduction of computers and robotics concepts. In grade 2, there's basic programming and robotics concepts. In grade 3, there's the exploration of the digital world and intermediate robotics. In grade 4, there's navigating advanced programming and advanced robotics. In grade 5 is mastering digital skills and expanding on their advancement of robotics. I hope you found this video to be helpful, giving you an outline of how vocabulary can be infused within these grade levels. Please check out my other videos focused on grades K2 and grades 3-5 on computer science curriculum with a vocabulary focus. Thanks for checking out the video. I'm going to talk about a workshopping activity I did around vocabulary and computer science, and how, taking a look at some research, some best practices around utilizing vocabulary to teach computer science and assess students' knowledge of computer science can be incredibly beneficial to working with teachers to help them understand some different instructional strategies that they might want to try with teaching computer science. This workshopping activity was also part of an experience of developing a common assessment for students with computer science and digital learning. So this activity starts with a form in which the participants filled out with some specific questions around, how they like to teach, utilizing vocabulary, whether or not they see the value of specific terms of vocabulary with teaching computer science concepts, a review of literature related to computer science with tiered vocabulary and the use of vocabulary for a variety of purposes. And ultimately, they came away, I feel like, with some amazing thoughts around, what their best practices were, how they've been identifying some strategies for teaching with vocabulary and computer science. And at the end of the day, I think they were better positioned to begin developing and updating curriculum that targeted specific vocabulary terms related to computer science. Ultimately, it's a vocabulary development lesson and a workshopping practice that allows teachers to really think about the value of vocabulary in instruction and how it can benefit them in their ability to engage students and help them retain concepts that eventually scaffold over time. And connecting vocabulary to their instructional practices. So this process was begun after we had initiated beginning to review vocabulary as a powerful part of teaching computer science. And so my first step with this process was to actually tier the vocabulary so that the tiered vocabulary that the teachers chose to use was particularly identified with the instructional level that the student's going to be learning at. So essentially, we would take some vocabulary and tier it towards whether the term was introduced to students, whether the term was going to be reinforced with students, or we were asking students to reach mastery with it. So after doing some of that work, this was an important step at trying to connect the instructional goals with the tiered vocabulary to the digital learning and computer science teaching in the curriculum. So I created this form based on asking these teachers and collecting their feedback on how they saw this process going. So essentially, we have vocabulary instruction in digital learning, computer science, and robotics, subject areas you teach, grade levels you teach, and starting with where are you placing an emphasis in vocabulary in your instructional window. Select the 5 most accurate ways you do it in your teaching. Please add another if not listed. So with the focus on vocabulary, thinking about pre-assessments, post-assessments, aligned and assigned with a unit, aligned and assigned with a lesson, the vocabulary integrated within the standards, word walls or other classroom environment features. So they have, maybe some of the vocabulary words on the walls or, some definitions or descriptions on the walls, vocabulary embedded within a lecture, taught using repetition with digital quizzes or reviews. So essentially, reviewing and creating assessments around the computer science vocabulary, or is it specifically taught with a skill component? Build a specific program, build this, design that, and so on. So this group of teachers, just to kind of give the background information, were middle school teachers. So their level of teaching did flex between teaching students specifically around introducing computer science concepts and programming languages, and then building them up to even a high level where they're ready to, do more programming in high school. So the next question here on this form is, what are 3 strategies with students that you have identified that support vocabulary understanding within your instruction? And so I was basically asking these teachers, what types of strategies with students did they identify to support the use of vocabulary? So what did they find that helped or worked kind of with their process when teaching? And then I did want them to check out some of the findings in this document here. This is a review of the current research of vocabulary instruction. I'll make this a little bit larger. This is a great document from the National Reading Center of Technical Assistance. And I cited some specific pages of this document for them to check out and review. We'll get to that in a moment. But this essentially covers frequency of exposure to targeted vocabulary words, explicit instruction of targeted vocab, and questions and language engagement. So this is to build a framework around the value of tiered vocabulary in lessons and what is most important when using vocabulary as an essential way to teach. Specifically, it's very important in computer science, or most contexts too. Provide direct instruction of vocabularies for a specific text. Repetition, multiple exposures to vocabulary items are important. Vocabulary words should use those that the learner will find useful in many contexts. Vocabulary tasks should be restructured as necessary. Vocabulary learning is effective when it entails active engagement that goes beyond definitional knowledge. Computer technology can be used effectively to help teach vocabulary. Vocabulary can be acquired through incidental learning. Dependence on a single vocabulary instruction method will not result in optimal learning. So those were some of the findings and other research brought into this study and some of the analysis. So just an interesting part of research that I referenced through this form. And I asked that they review those findings. So I asked them to select two of those findings identified on the first 2 pages and relate it to their work. Which finding did you select first? Why did you select this finding? Which best practice to our vocabulary assessment work can be informed by this finding? What is an essential question that we have about this finding due to the work we are undertaking? Essential questions are designed to encourage further questioning about a particular subject. They're intended to spark conversation about the subject rather than simply providing a factual answer to the question. Then based on their second finding that they identified, why did they find that, select this one? What best practice to our vocabulary assessment work can be informed by this finding? What is an essential question that we have about this finding due to the work we are undertaking? So I also integrated the multi-tiered systems of support, MTSS framework, and asked them to review the vocabulary strategies related on page 114 of this document. So this is a district's, the school district of Lee County's document on MTSS and how they integrated it. It's a great document. They did a great job with this. Long, but they did a great job. So what I asked here was essentially to review this page on suggested classroom strategies for phonological awareness, phonics and fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, and then also with math, some ways that vocabulary was embedded within instruction. And this just provided some ways to pre-teach vocabulary, talked about pre-teaching vocabulary in a variety of contexts using multiple modalities, emphasizing key vocabulary in different ways, provide increased exposure to oral language, pair with movement. Some good ideas in here just to get the topic of vocabulary started. So the next section is selecting focus areas and strategies for vocabulary instruction. Which 2 strategies on that page do you think are the most effective? What strategies should we consider or know work or why in our process of tiered vocabulary assessment? What strategies can we add when we think about our process of tiered vocabulary? What you see identified as topics for the beginner, intermediate, and advanced in this guide. So I asked that they begin to start thinking about beginner, intermediate, and advanced concepts of vocabulary and what changes when you start to think about it that way. And specifically to their teaching process, like if you're introducing a word, a beginning level word, how is that different than an intermediate level word and then advanced level, particularly how it relates to computer science. And the final reflection was really around the biggest challenge of this process of assessment, being specific as possible, how much time it takes, finding words, what are a variety of student needs, and what are the specific challenges of students' vocabulary comprehension as it relates to computer science, digital literacy, and robotics, particularly with this type of vocabulary. Are there things we're not thinking about with the tiered vocabulary at this level? How do you think students at other levels should be prepared for this type of assessment? If students are coming up to this level and there's a higher focus on vocabulary, is there something we should think about? What are current gaps in our process of instruction with the vocabulary or in the instruction of digital learning, computer science, and robotics at different grade levels we should identify? So basically a little bit of a gap analysis and what can I do to support you better in this process? So what I did was I then took the results of this form and curated them into a way to kind of view them on this document here. And essentially, I called this process Unpacking Computer Science Vocabulary Assessment Process. So complete reviewing resources and completing the form was the first step. Review the feedback, which we did as a group, and then address next steps and ideas. So just to give you an idea of the types of responses that were received here, most of these were kind of multiple choice with some additional feedback here on specific things. Where are you placing an emphasis in vocabulary in your instructional window? Select the 5 most accurate ways you do it in your teaching. Please add another if not listed. So options here around pre-assessment and post-assessment, word walls. Those were the first kind of recommendations. Most people chose the pre-assessment, post-assessment, word walls, other classroom environments taught within the lecture, aligned and assigned with a lesson. So this was the sequence. So you can see the pre-assessment was by far the first option taken. Word walls was first by some people, but then also aligned and assigned with a lesson, taught with repetition. So some of that taught with repetition, of course, is maybe further back in the options in which they're using it because they are identifying and aligning it with other content, whether it's an assessment that they've done or they've put something up on their walls or they're specifically aligning it with a lesson. Also, specifically taught within a skill component. Sometimes in the beginning of this process of assigning vocabulary, having it specifically within a component of a lesson and being able to focus on it doesn't always come up as the first item. So what are 3 strategies with students that you have identified that support vocabulary understanding within your instruction? Use multiple modalities to present vocabulary: pre-assessment and post-assessment, repetition, project-based, repetition of words, providing alternative examples, recalling definitions when using the word in context, direct instruction, model the use of the language, provide visual relationships, using the word in their writing and papers they turn in, repetition during lecture. So a lot of different ways that vocabulary is integral to how computer science is taught, the different ways students represent the understanding of the words, the different ways they're using the words, pre and post assessments, of course, repetition, alternatives, direct instruction, visual relationships is great, and also presentations of projects, whether or not they're using the terms. So what this group found particularly important was more collab time, to help do this process, grade level collaboration, and a common understanding of what they were trying to accomplish. I also wanted to ask what they saw as their gaps with this process. Definitely having common definitions of terms and making sure that everyone was on the same page with specific words. Additional focus is on the number of times students met within a course as opposed to another course. Time to actually do the work, especially with the depth of computer science. The time to collaborate. And also, not all students have a particular course, so maybe there are gaps when they eventually do get into some of these courses. How do you think students at other levels should be prepared for this type of assessment? Of course, more vocabulary, positive experience in computer-related courses, see the value in learning computer science prior to being at the middle school level. What are specific challenges of students' vocabulary comprehension as it relates to computer science, digital literacy, and robotics instruction and assessment? Retaining what they learn. Different language levels, ELL, special needs, etc. Making the terms engaging to the content, super important. Finding ways to get buy-in from the students, understand that these terms will have a big payoff at the end. Establish a baseline with our vocabulary. Some vocabulary could be new to students at certain levels. What is your biggest challenge to this process of assessment? Separating out this type of assessment adds more to a unit that we already have a short time with. It can be time consuming. Finding ways to blend vocabulary into final assessments, incorporate vocabulary into daily lessons, creating original assessments so they are meaningful. I think that's important. Yep, right. Students don't always find it interesting to learn vocab, right? Reading comprehension skills of students need to be at a level for the vocabulary. What is an essential question that we have about this finding due to the work we are undertaking? Further question about a topic. How can technology aid our learning? How can we choose the most effective vocabulary strategies? How can we identify the best methods to assess vocabulary at each unit? Are certain alternative assessments more useful for a unit based around engineering rather than programming, and vice versa? So, if there are alternative assessments, is it more useful than in a different content area? Does correct vocabulary impact engagement? Having critical debates around the use of technology using Socratic seminar activity. So this is where I had them identify their item they picked first, and then why did they select this finding, and what best practice to our vocabulary assessment work can be informed by the finding. So vocabulary learning effective allows students to show how they understand the vocabulary through application. The best practice related to that is providing students with multiple avenues to interact with the vocabulary in order to draw stronger connections with the meaning. Finding vocabulary learning is effective when it entails active engagement that goes beyond definitional knowledge. So here, this allows students to show how they understand the vocabulary through application. Best practice provides students with multiple avenues to interact with the vocabulary. Vocabulary can be acquired through incidental learning. Students can learn the meaning of words and they are exposed to them in different ways. Best practice, it is helpful to have structured read-alouds and discussion sessions that include vocabulary words. Finding, repetition, and multiple exposure to vocabulary items are important. I selected this finding because it emphasizes the importance of seeing vocabulary words in multiple contexts. I think that this can mean seeing words in multiple contexts, but also experience the words in multiple ways. So the idea here is that to set up assessments that involve deeper understanding of the word, have it be progressive, start with a definition, and then progress to a more complex meaning or implementation of the word. Seeing the definition of a computer component, understanding what the computing component does, and learning where the part fits into a computer. So different layers of understanding with an activity in context. So this finding, providing direct instruction, the importance of direct instruction, vocabulary words that I explicitly introduce are ones that are necessary to the understanding of the field of robotics, not a specific text, but a specific field. Students should be consciously aware of what we are doing and why we are doing it, why these words. I think that's great too, just why we have the focus. Provide students with a breakdown of the specific vocabulary that you are focusing on for the unit. So vocabulary is effective when it entails active engagement that goes beyond definitional knowledge. I've seen that when kids interact with content in a hands-on way, they are more likely to use it and understand in the proper context. A good practice here is set up lessons using the PBL, project-based learning, as a guide. So we continue to kind of go into additional findings, which ones they find a second. So how does, the best practices related to computer technology being effective, dependence on a single vocabulary instruction. So technology can be used to create a variety of assessments, varying vocabulary instruction, finding ways to assess vocabulary in ways that are not just rote memorization, figuring out methods where you can check for deeper understanding, the finding around active engagement, provide visual representations whenever possible. The finding vocabulary words should be those that the learner will find useful in many contexts. This is usually used when I combine lecture with class discussions in a think, pair, share activity. So these educators definitely benefited from thinking about a finding related to tiered vocabulary and focusing on vocabulary as an integral part of teaching computer science. And this is the first step towards getting teachers to understand how these terms can then connect to how they're teaching. So I think within this, we saw different levels of instruction utilizing the vocabulary, from introducing the concept to providing examples for how the students are learning the concept, what the focus of using the vocabulary would be in instruction, and also began to address student needs related to understanding the vocabulary, whether it's a reading comprehension topic or is it embedded within a project. So I really found this process to be really beneficial towards taking tiered vocabulary concepts and starting to think about how they can be integrated. Thanks again for checking out the video. I appreciate you checking it out. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and be in contact with me if you're interested in any of these strategies. Thanks.